Hello, and welcome to the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast with astrologer Shelley Overton. Hi, and welcome to the March 11th, 2022 edition of the AstroEnergy Astrology podcast. My name is Shelley Overton. I'm an astrologer in Orlando, Florida. I want to welcome you here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the week, and we're also going to go over how to start to read a chart. So I know I do it every week. I tell you about astrology, but I don't necessarily get into the details of explaining what it all means. So I'm going to start with an example of what we have here. The chart that you're looking at is the current chart of the moment. What this is as an image is a basic representation of the planet Earth, which is the circle in the center. And the line through the middle is the horizon. The eastern horizon is on the left, the western horizon is on the right. So when you look at this, it's basically 360 degrees, which is a circle, around the outside of the planet. Each part of the circle is divided into 12 different sections, which represent the zodiac. So we have 12 signs, and there are 12 segments of the sky. To have an equal house system, which there are multiple houses, there are multiple house systems, and each one defines the cusp between the houses differently. And so there may be slight variations depending on what you use, say Placidus, Porphyry, Vedic. In a natural house system, each section of the zodiac wheel is divided exactly into 30 degrees. This one is not representing that. This is representing Porphyry, I believe. Placidus, excuse me, it's right there. It's Placidus on the chart. So the Placidus wheel divides each house, which is each segment, into a different amount of degrees. This is a different software program I'm using. It's online. It's through astro.com. And so they use Placidus. I have not found a way to change that as of yet. So anyway, we have different degrees. As you can see, 0 degrees on the horizon of Cancer. But if you go up here to this line, this is the 30-degree mark for Gemini. Oh, you can't see that because I'm not screenshotting it. There we go. So if you look at this part right here on this cusp, this section right there is the 30-degree mark for the whole sign of Gemini. This line is the cusp between the houses. That says that at looks like about 26 degrees of Taurus, it changes sign. So you have 30 degrees plus 4 degrees to get to that 26 mark. So this is a 36-degree house. The exact opposite is also a 36-degree house because opposites have to be the same size. Up here, we have 26 degrees to here, and then over here, it looks like it's about 10 plus maybe 1. So you have 26 plus 11, and that's 37 degrees there as well. But when you get to this house, it's less because 37 and 37 is 74. And so if you take 90, which is a quarter of the sky, 90 degrees, and divide it by 37 or subtract 37 and 37, which is 74, then you get 16. So there is fewer degrees to get here. This is a 90-degree angle in the circle. There are only 16 degrees in the segment. And so some of that house slops over into this one. So that's just a little bit of math to help you understand Placidus and how it divides things. I personally, when you're starting, would prefer an equal house chart because it's so much easier to learn when you just give each house their own exact sign. And then later on, when you start to divide the houses in a different way with a different house system, you can see other things through that. But we're not going to discuss that right now. I'm just showing you a little example. An equal house system means that these lines right here are the exact cusp and they are divided by sign. So here is the horizon, the ascendant, which means coming up. So it rotates up. That's why it's an ascendant. It rotates up from this point. And the descendant rotates down from that point. So here on the eastern horizon, you have the ascendant, which is the identity, and you have the descendant, which is how other people see you and how you cooperate with other people. The upper half of the chart is the part that we look to for how you interact on a global level, and the lower half is how you interact on an interpersonal level. So upper, transpersonal, lower, interpersonal. And because this is around the Earth, it is the Earth in the center and how we see the planets from our perspective on Earth. So we have the chart. It's divided into 12 sections. Each section represents a part of the sky, and each part of the sky represents a zodiac sign. A natural chart would be Aries on the cusp at the 9 o'clock position, meaning where 9 falls on o'clock. And I will put this in the left side of the chart where the horizon is your rising sign, and that would be influenced by the first sign of the zodiac, which is Aries, going on around the chart. So it goes Aries, Taurus, Gemini for the first quadrant, and then Cancer, Leo, Virgo for the second quadrant, rounding out the lower half of the chart. Then it goes Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius for the upper right quadrant, and then Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, rounding out the rest of the chart. So each one of these sections is called a house. And so when you talk about house systems, that's what they are referencing. The house is each segment we divide the sky into in a chart, and using a system to divine where the cusps and shift marks are on those, it divides the chart. Each of the planets now and lights are in an area of the sky represented by a zodiac sign. So this week we have Moon in Cancer, just went in, so it's 4 degrees just inside. So if this is the horizon, the moon is just below the horizon, which means, you know, momentarily when I go into the current astrology of right now, which, let me see if I have that. So as we look at the chart, when it gets to 4 degrees, the moon will be on the horizon. So if I want to know where that is, from where I'm sitting and where this chart is located, which is here in Orlando, I just have to look east out my window. And if I could see that, because there are houses in the way, I can't see it. But if I could see the horizon, the moon would start to be visible at this time on the horizon. Right now, currently, the sun is midheaven, which is accurate because it's noon here in Orlando. So the sun is overhead, and that is the midheaven MC on the chart. It's represented here by the MC, and that means midheaven and medium coeli, and the bottom of the chart is icy. So imam coeli. And we have the sun up in the midheaven, which means that is shining the light down, and it is the fame point in the zodiac. It is also the cusp of the career of our chart. So whatever falls on that in your natal chart is influencing your career. It is ruled by the sign of Capricorn. So today we have the sun right there at the midheaven. Jupiter is about to go into that house, and Neptune is right next to it. Because that point is continually rotating with the Earth and the sun shifts and all the planets move, we have this moment in time where the sun at noon is up at the middle of the sky, but it is also surrounded by Jupiter and Neptune. So Jupiter is the planet that rules Sagittarius, sun rules Leo, and Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So we have the influence not only of the planet, but of the sign, and they are synonymous. The planet is the ruler of a sign, which imbues it with the energy of that planet. So Jupiter is a planet of expansion. It's enormous. It influences us for about a year of time. Currently, it's at 16 degrees of Pisces. It does move very fast the beginning of this year and gets into Aries, which you can see is the next sign right there on the cusp. So Jupiter's flying across the sun and across Neptune, which means he is influencing our sense of self. He is influencing our subconscious, which is what Neptune is. And Jupiter is a planet of not only expansion, but awareness of spirituality and spiritual growth. He is a very transformational planet. And he influences us through our own transformation, which can also include moves. It can include shifts of housing. It can include transportation, education, long distance travel, airline travel, music. And he goes over the sun. So it is influencing our ego. We are only 5 degrees away from Jupiter hitting that point. So if we look up in this type of book, which is a chart called an ephemeris, we will see where that particular planet, what day he gets to the same degree as the sun. So today is March 11th. It's at 16 degrees. The sun is at 20. So he needs to move all the way closer to, and he's not going to go over the sun. The sun is going to go over him, which he just did at 16 degrees. So cut all that out. Okay, so basically the sun goes over Jupiter, and the reason for that is that Jupiter moves slower than the sun. So from our perspective on Earth, the sun transits across the slower planets, and that means that sun went over Jupiter, goes about 1 degree a day. So about 5 days ago, there was a conjunction of sun and Jupiter. In the sign of Pisces, it meant that we had this tremendous expansion of awareness of sentimentality and emotionalism and connectedness of all people. And then that's really when we started pulling together as a planet around Ukraine and what was going on there. Sun going over Pisces means there's going to be a significant energy, potentially of loss of life and potentially flooding. It is also a water sign. It can rule snow, it can rule rain, it can rule flooding of water in lakes, in rivers, of the rain, of storms. Piscean energy is, if you think Titanic, if you think Neptune, the god of the oceans, this is the energy that we're going into. The sun is in this particular context going through a chart, is the collective ego. So as the sun now in Pisces is transiting that energy of Pisces, it means people who are born with that sign feel very strongly that connection of water and emotionalism, which is always ruled by water in the zodiac. The water signs rule and express through emotion. We are having a collective understanding of that emotional life, of that intuitive life, of sentimentality, of beauty, of music, of everything that Pisces/Neptune rules, and we understand. It is a dreamy energy. It is the 12th house. We understand intuition through dreams. We get more profound dreams at this time. We are more connected to the afterlife in this energy. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, so we get understanding through the end degrees and the collective mindset through the collective zodiac. So as the sun comes into the last 10 degrees or the last decan of the zodiac, we go through the energy of Scorpio, which also rules death and rebirth. So these next 10 days are going to be a significant time to really focus on the end of life or loss of life and how that integrates into our daily life and what our emotions are around that, what is surrounding it in our personal lives. That is the sun, the ego, the personal life. And Neptune is a transpersonal planet, which means it affects the collective. So you have this interpersonal energy in the sky, ruling our ego, ruling our sense of self, going through this moment of time of collective grief, of collective endings, of retirement, which Neptune also expresses the energy of retirement or the end of a story. So today, right there with Sun, Neptune conjunct in Pisces, we are at the end of a story, and it can mean that retirement is very strong in the collective. It can also mean we're focused on movies, which are an escapist energy and are ruled under the Pisces/Neptune energy. So movies are going to do really well right now, especially if it's released this Friday, which is today. We're going to see the collective really understand an emotional bond with the movie that releases. Or if one has come out recently under that Sun in Pisces, Jupiter in Pisces, Mercury is now in Pisces, our mindset is really embracing the energy of Pisces. I would suggest that you kind of get okay with this Pisces energy in your chart and in your daily life, because it is going to be a very strong energy as Jupiter continues through it this year, but wraps up its time. And then we look towards the next year or so, having the energy come from Saturn moving into Pisces. So I'm going to look up some things that I wrote down before this podcast to tell you how to cope. And number one is, if you are emotionally triggered right now, it's like a rabbit hole of negativity. And so you need to step back and assess your power point. So you are your power. You're not another's power. And this is a Neptunian Piscean energy where we recognize the collective and the boundaries seem to be lower. So the ego itself, when we're in our sense of self, we're in our spirit. When we are connected to internal information from spirit, we're in our center. When we look outside of ourselves, we're in our ego. And the ego can take us down that rabbit hole of overthinking. I was watching, I didn't see it the first run, so we found out this week that The Amazing Race had a finale. And my daughter and I share a love of that show. So we started The Amazing Race last night, and there was a scene where a couple was trying to get a clue, and the scene was going through the underground in London on a mail train, and go to the end of that line. There was a basket of mail, and they had to find a clue. So two of the guys went together, and they each had a basket, and they were sorting through all these packages and letters, and they were just mock-ups. They weren't real mail, but they were trying to find a clue. And they came to the bottom, and it said Amazing Race on an envelope. And there was a third person there who came in around the same time they did, and they found the envelope and said, I'm out of here. And they caught the next train back to go on with the race. But these two people were separate. They were on separate teams, and they each found the envelope. But then they thought there was more of a clue there. And so they kept digging, and they kept opening envelopes of mail and looking for something more. And they're like, it can't be this easy. There's got to be something more. That's your ego. Your ego saying, no, it's not that simple. Spirit says, yes, it is that simple. Just go with the flow. And so they ended up wasting half an hour looking through the mail when they could have been on to the next part of the race. And so that's an example of this energy where we overthink. The ego carries us away. But if we're in our spirit, we're in that higher vibration, we can really understand where we need to be and go with the flow much better. So let's see. And then there's the energy of ego that brings in false evidence appearing real, fear. And so that's when we get that sidetrack to, oh my gosh, what would happen if? Oh no, I'm going to worry. And right now I'm living in a situation where I have to deal with my parents much more. And there's a lot of worry. And that worry brings us to a place of ego. And it is, if you allow the ego to take over, you go down the rabbit hole and spin down into the negativity. Just watching the media right now, I've noticed that there is tremendous amounts of negative articles. I just scroll trying to find any kind of news site that will give me accurate information without trying to trigger me emotionally. And I can tell you, the emotional triggers in the news media now are designed to keep you there, to lock you in. You get emotionally triggered right now, and you're wanting to talk back to the TV or talk back to the internet. And once you start talking back to the TV or the internet, they've got you. You'll keep scrolling. That's the effect of Facebook. I left Facebook as a main social media site about 3 years ago. And I realized it was just this constant stream of negativity that was really triggering me, or maybe it was 5 years ago, during the election of, number 45. We went and had all of the media just ramping up to try and keep you there and to try and trigger you to that emotional bond with one or the other candidate. And it was just so negative and so superseding my own sense of self. And that can happen to you. So just watch out for the news media. Definitely ego will feed on your fears, and you can't control the other, what is outside of you. And so you have to remove the power from focusing on them to focusing on your vision, and don't buy into the fear mongering. daylight. I noticed this right before dawn, when it's darkest before the dawn. Right before dawn, I feel tremendously aware of the dark side and the lower vibrations going on in the world. It's when things have fallen asleep, people are relaxing their guard, people are working behind the scenes because darkness hides. And so I, as an intuitive, feel a lot of the darker energy just before the sun rises. And I wake up. Lately, I've been waking up right at 5:30, 5 o'clock, and my body has been moving my body clock backwards with the sunrise. And so I'm getting up earlier and earlier. And so it's good because they're setting the clocks ahead this weekend on the 13th, Saturday to Sunday. And so my body's already preparing me for that, to be awake at the sunrise. So what is 6 a.m. will now be 7, and what is 7 will now be 8. And so I'm already there. I'm already awake early. And so it's probably not going to affect me. Although if you have to be somewhere at regular time, you're going to probably be out of it, or lag time, come this weekend. So just be aware of that. Also, I just want to tell you, stand in your own personal power. And that means doing things that support the self. In other words, exercise, spend time alone when you need to, listen to calming music if you find yourself getting out of control. I personally have a Buddhist practice that I do morning and evening. I have prayers I do in the morning and prayers I do at night. So it grounds me in my spirit, in my centeredness. And so you can do that. You can meditate. You can go outside in nature and hug a tree, go for a walk. I just got back from a walk before my podcast. I've also noticed that caffeine definitely has an effect on anxiety and nervousness and mental excessiveness. So yes, it can make you more clear-minded, but if you're particularly hyper aware of things in any cycle of the moon and any time of the month, you might want to relax your caffeine drinking, because you'll be that much more susceptible to anxiety or other triggers of different calming energies. So, or alert energy. So whatever your personal cycle is, pay attention to that. Pay attention to how you're particularly more aware of things, or more mental, more analytical, or even nervous and anxious. So that's all I'm going to talk about for how a chart is set up for today. We'll probably go over more as time goes on, give you a little bit more understanding of how to read a chart as we do more shows. Okay, so coming up this week, we're going to have the moon over the weekend in Cancer, which of course is a cardinal sign opposite Pluto energy in Capricorn. It's also, let me see if there are any other entities over there. Nope, just right now we've got Pluto and Capricorn. So Cancer on Sunday evening, Monday, is going to be a little bit intense as the moon goes into those degrees with late Cancer opposing the moon. So Sunday night's probably going to be another heightened awareness of what's going on with Ukraine. Moon enters Leo at 3:32 p.m. Sunday and 12:32 p.m. Pacific, so 3:32 p.m. Eastern. And so when it goes into Leo, it's going to start to make us more aware of the sun energy. So of course, Leo and the sun in Pisces do not necessarily get along. They are inconjunct, meaning 150 degrees apart. And that's by energy, because the sun is at late degrees. Let's see when the sun goes into Pisces, which is, sun enters Aries on Sunday the 20th, and that's the spring equinox, the first day of spring. And so we're going to have a full moon 2 days before that, which is the 18th, and that's in Virgo. So going back to the moon over the weekend, we have it entering Leo Sunday night. So Monday, Tuesday, and into Wednesday, early in the morning and overnight, actually. Tuesday night to Wednesday, we're going to have the moon enter Virgo. And since it is a full moon in Virgo on Friday, the first half of the week is going to be more seeking out of connection. It is leadership, but it is also dictators, in my view. World leaders are ruled under sun. Royalty is ruled under the sun in Leo. Leo rules the sign, or sun rules the sign of Leo. So it is going to be a focus on world leaders. It's going to be a focus on connectedness, because Leo wants to connect. Then in the second half of the week, the sun moves into Virgo. which is the practical, pragmatic side of our activity. Monday, there's a square between the Leo moon and Uranus and Taurus. So again, that's going to be connectedness of the markets and how we see what goes on with world leadership and the markets and the volatility of the markets. It can be a sense that I know what I'm doing. If you're in your ego on Monday, you may sell off despite yourself. By the time Moon gets into Virgo, Virgo with the markets is going to be more thoughtful processing and analysis, and it's good for health and healthcare. I do think that with all the energy in Pisces, Pisces rules bodily fluids, which of course the pandemic is kind of pivotal on body fluids. And so every time we hit those Pisces degrees, we're opposite Virgo, which is health, and it is that pandemic energy. So especially with Mercury now in early Pisces, and it approaches Jupiter, which is expansion. The next couple of weeks, I foresee more expansion of variants or the COVID energy. And let me see. Yeah, Venus and Mars today are still at 4 degrees of Aquarius. So they're still pretty much in lockstep within a minute of time. And that is the Uranian energy. So it's also uranium, which nuclear power plants. Saturn's at 20 degrees. As Mars and Venus move closer to Saturn, it is going to be an awareness of the nuclear power as a power source, but also as a threat. So Mars, of course, is now in Aquarius, which is humanitarianism, but as it gets closer to Saturn, it's really getting us to look at what we need to make stable and sincere and structured. And let's just look at when that is. So Mars gets to 20 right around the 2nd of April. And of course, Sun will be in Aries at that time. So Mars will be the ruler of Aries in Aquarius. And that means humanitarianism. It's cooperative energy because they are only 2 signs apart. So we've got Pisces after Aquarius and then Aries. So they are cooperative, and there are squares going on as well, of course, with Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, to Saturn. So it's going to be an interesting time. We have cooperation desired, the collective, the action will be taken with the collective. And then, of course, Putin, as far as I'm concerned, is under the energy of Uranus as a country and as an individual. And so is the leader of Ukraine, Zelensky. So look to how Uranus interacts with the other planets. But as Mars gets closer to Saturn, there is a restriction in Aquarius. There is a friction between Saturn, Mars, and Uranus. So Uranus is going to stand from this side of economics and from the side of let's think things through and being grounded. Whereas Mars and Saturn in Aquarius, because it answers to Uranus, it's going to address markets, it's going to address money, it's going to address the invasion, it's going to address how we respond to it and where we're at odds with that energy. The other side of the coin on this energy squaring as Mars and Venus join with Saturn is that we are learning and growing from what's happening. And I do have optimism as we move closer to a Pluto in Aquarius year next year. And I do see that these are the issues that we as a collective really need to face. We've gone through decades of my life, at least. I'm an adult for over 20 and 30 years. All of the movies in that timeline have focused on apocalypse and nuclear holocausts and all these things that we focused on that energy. We expected that energy. And now we're faced with a real world stress of where we have put our energy. So now it's time to really focus on how we can move to the next level. And Aquarius, this is my hope, is that Aquarius is the sign of expansion, of clarity. And in our minds, we get a grip on the big picture and we understand the interactions of the machine in a new way. So as a collective, we are waking up, and the ego that is being driven right now by Putin is going to be addressed. We are addressing it as a collective with Mars going to Saturn, and there is restriction of the male energy and the dominance and the need to be the only one in the collective who knows what's going on. The downside, and I love Aquarius and Uranus energy. I have it very close to my sun in my chart. And I can tell you the negative side of Aquarian energy is that we won't listen to other points of view, and we see ourselves in an arrogant way of knowing the answers, or we channel the other, the contrariness, which I've been dealing with a lot this week from my son, who has strong Aquarian energy in his chart. A lot of contrary, like saying no just to say no because you can. And so pay attention to where people are saying no. And something I've learned over the last few years as a spiritual person is it's about the energy of saying no just to say no. So don't necessarily take no as a final answer, especially under Aquarius. It can shift in a moment. And so how I've been able to deal with things in my life is just not, when you get what are seemingly negative situations in your day-to-day life, things you wouldn't have had happen a certain way, you can look at it as an answer to your prayer, and that there may be something in it that is positive for you. So if you look for the positive in it, you may find the lesson in it. And as a spiritual person who does express prayer for understanding and pray to know things and pray to incorporate an understanding of difficulty, those situations are answers to our prayers because we don't see a bigger picture. So if you can wrap your mind around a bigger picture, and that the way we are living our lives is a lot like a maze and we can't see around the next corner, but if we have faith, we can know that the situations we come to have a solution. We just have to remove the ego, which says there's no solution and this is a horrible thing, and now I'm going to make this huge mountain out of a molehill. So if I give you anything for the week, is to know that look at every situation that seems negative as something that is probably coming in for your growth, and there is something to learn from it that is positive and will springboard you to the next positive growth cycle in your life. And anyway, with that, I'm going to end the podcast, and I thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you again next week. Take care. Look me up online. Don't forget, angeliczodiac.com. Thanks again. Take care. Bye. Pisces, you torture me.
Hi, this is Shelley. Thank you for joining us this week. To contact me for a private reading, go to angeliczodiac.com under the Readings tab. Background music was provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. To purchase my ebook, Learn Astrology, you can find it at angeliczodiac.com, including discounts. Be sure to check back next week and subscribe through iTunes at AstroEnergy Astrology Show.